Developers do not want you to see this video because the 13 towns I'm about to show you are the ones the rest of Florida paved over, franchised, and left exactly where they were. There's a version of this state that never makes it onto a postcard. The version where the courthouse clock still runs on its original works, where the antique shop still has the creaky pine floor it had when it sold feed and seed, and where the loudest sound on Main Street at noon is a screen door and somebody's dog. I spent months off the interstate, past the outlet malls and the theme park exits, into the little railroad towns and courthouse squares that simply stopped changing sometime around the 1960s and never bothered to start again. And what I found was a town where mediums have been passing messages from the dead in the same Victorian cottages since before Florida had air conditioning. A village whose entire downtown was quietly built on a fortune made from nickel Coca-Colas, and a courthouse square where the rodeo has been running since before World War II. If a slower, cheaper, older Florida sounds better to you than another strip mall and another 12-lane exit ramp, hit subscribe, because we're counting down 13 Florida towns that got stuck in the 60s and never left. Let's count it down. Number 13, Yankeetown. Founded in 1923 by an Indiana politician named Armani's Knots as a hunting retreat for wealthy northerners, this Levy County town got its name from a mail carrier who kept griping about hauling packages to that Yankee town. It stuck. Knots built the Isaac Walton Lodge. The Depression turned the retreat into a real fishing community, and in 1961, Elvis Presley showed up to film Follow That Dream on these same oak-shaded streets. The oaks are still there, the cracker homes are still there. The motto is literally Old Florida on the Nature Coast, and for once, a motto is just telling the truth. Number 12, Century. Built from nothing in 1901 around the Alger Sullivan sawmill, this panhandle town was named for the new century it was born into. By 1915, the lumber company had built its own hotel, hospital, commissary, and segregated housing rows for mill families, one of the most complete company towns Florida ever produced. The mill eventually closed, but the residential district along Front and Church Streets made the National Register in 1989 as a rare, nearly untouched planned company town. Nobody bulldozed it. Nobody had a reason to. Number 11, White Springs. In the 1800s, this Suwannee River town was Florida's first commercialized mineral spring, with over 500 hotel rooms built around water people believed could cure arthritis. Tourists came by the thousands to soak in it. Then in the 1930s, mineral bathing fell out of fashion nationwide, and White Springs just quietly stopped growing. What's left is the Stephen Foster Folk Culture Center, built in 1950 to honor the man who wrote Old Folks at Home about the Suwannee, a river he never actually saw in person. The spring house still stands empty over water nobody bathes in anymore. Number 10, Sopchoppy. Some towns get frozen by tragedy. Sopchoppy got frozen by a sound. For generations, families in this Wakulla County town survived by worm grunting, driving a wooden stake into the ground and rubbing it with steel to send vibrations through the soil that bring earthworms to the surface by the thousands, then selling them as fishing bait. It's a real trade that real families lived on. Today, the whole town throws the Worm Gruntin' Festival every April, and it is exactly as strange and wonderful as it sounds. If you're finding your new favorite weird little town on this list, hit that subscribe button because I go looking for places like these every single week. Number 9, Monticello. The Jefferson County Courthouse, finished in 1909 with a classical revival dome, still anchors the intersection of the two highways that built this town. Cotton and pecans came first, but watermelons became Monticello's identity, and the Watermelon Festival still draws the whole county every summer. The storefronts around the square never got demolished for a bypass because the bypass simply never came. Number 8, Cross Creek. In 1928, a struggling writer named Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings bought a 72-acre orange grove here hoping for financial independence. Instead, she found the material for The Yearling, which won the Pulitzer Prize in 1939. She left the property to the University of Florida, and today Cross Creek is still exactly what it was. A scattering of homes on a creek between two lakes, a hamlet so small it barely counts as a town, preserved as a National Historic Landmark because nothing here was ever worth tearing down. Number 7, Havana. For 65 years, this Gadsden County town was the shade tobacco capital of the world. Then in the 1960s, the tobacco market shifted overseas and Havana was economically gutted almost overnight. It sat half empty for 2 decades until 1983, when a single antique dealer moved his shop in from Tallahassee. Others followed. The same brick storefronts that once packed tobacco leaf now sell depression glass and mid-century furniture, and the old Planters Exchange building is a museum to the crop that built and then abandoned this town. Number 6, Quincy. In the 1920s, a local banker named Pat Monroe noticed that broke Depression-era customers would still find a nickel for a Coca-Cola, so he told everyone in town to buy Coke stock. They did. By the eve of World War II, Quincy had the highest per capita income of any town in the entire United States, all traced back to one soft drink. At least 67 local families became what folks still call the Coca-Cola millionaires. Sit with that for a second. A farming town smaller than most shopping centers, once the richest place per person in the whole country. And it still looks like a small southern Main Street because that money built libraries and scholarships, not skylines. Number 5, Arcadia. A fire wiped out most of downtown Arcadia in 1905, and the town rebuilt in brick almost overnight, including the Opera House in 1906, which hosted vaudeville, movies, and political rallies for 30 years straight. The Arcadia Rodeo traces back to 1929 and has run nearly every year since, making it the oldest continuously run rodeo in the state. Hurricane Ian tore through recently and interrupted a renovation of the Opera House, but the building reopened anyway because apparently nothing has ever managed to actually finish off this town. If you're learning things about Florida you never expected, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps. Number 4, Apalachicola. This Gulf Coast port has reinvented its entire economy about 4 separate times. Cotton, then timber, then sponge diving, then oysters and shrimp. And it kept doing this without ever tearing down the last version of itself. Today, the historic district holds more than 900 buildings on the National Register, and downtown is still lined with the same brick storefronts that shipped cotton bales in the 1830s. The oyster beds struggled hard in recent years, and the fishery was shut down entirely before reopening in 2025. An honest reminder that this town's whole identity still rises and falls with the water around it. Number 3, Cedar Key. In the 1850s, this tiny Gulf island was the western end of Florida's very first cross-state railroad, briefly one of the most important ports in the state. Then the pencil industry moved in, and for decades the cedar trees here were shipped off to become Eberhard Faber pencils sold across the country. The railroad moved on, the pencil factories closed, and Cedar Key simply never got big again. Fewer than 1,000 people live here now, on a historic island district where the whole downtown still faces the same harbor it always has. Number 2, Micanopy. Founded in 1821 and named for the Seminole chief Mico Nape, this is officially Florida's oldest inland town, and it barely covers a single square mile. More than 20 antique shops now line Choloca Boulevard, and the Herlong Mansion built in 1845 still takes overnight guests on the National Register. Under 700 people live here, in a town that turned 200 years old in 2021 and looks, on most streets, like it's still working on its second century at the same unhurried pace. Number 1, Cassadaga. And this is the town that never let go of anything, not even the dead. In 1875, a spiritualist medium named George Colby followed what he said was a message from his spirit guide all the way from Wisconsin to a patch of land near D-Land, and in 1895 he deeded 35 of his acres to found a spiritualist camp. That camp never stopped. Cassadaga is the oldest continuously active spiritualist community in the South, and right now, in the same Victorian cottages built well over a century ago, working mediums are still giving readings to visitors who drive in from every direction. More than 60 historic buildings across roughly 240 acres made the National Register in 1991. It's been called the psychic capital of the world, and unlike almost everything else on this list, nothing here ever collapsed and had to be rediscovered. It simply never stopped operating, generation after generation, in the same small Florida town, since before the 20th century began. So that's the list. 13 Florida towns that the interstate skipped and the developers forgot. Places that decided somewhere around the 60s that they liked things fine the way they were. None of them have a stadium with their name on it. None of them are on a theme park map. But every one of them held onto a main street you can actually walk, a history you can actually touch, and a cost of living that a fixed income can survive. And Florida makes that math easier than most states, since it has no state income tax at all, which stretches a pension or a social security check further than it would almost anywhere else in the country. If this made you want to go find a town that still feels like home, subscribe, because I go looking for places exactly like these every single week. The forgotten ones, the cheap ones, the ones the brochures leave out. Now tell me in the comments which one of these 13 you'd actually pack up and move to. I'll see you in the next one.